She was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. How much money we have to raise? $125,000. Pretty ironic. The distance from Vancouver to Whistler is 125 kilometers. And I Googled how many days I had to train, and it was 125 days.
Willpower is probably the least effective strategy for trying to stop drinking because they associate not drinking with being in a prison. What do all prisoners want to do? They want to get out of prison. You tell yourself not to do something, you tend to do that very thing.
I want to talk psyops.
There's 4 things that take control: focus, authority, tribe, and emotion. Those 4 things, I can control a dog or I can control an entire population of human beings.
And I just couldn't keep my mouth shut. I've been a Democrat all my life, yet I'm feeling what so many people and millions of people are feeling. The party I grew up with is not who they are today.
If you're getting an A in finance, but you're getting an F in family, what's your cumulative GPA? Now you're mediocre again, which is why it's so important you develop an operating system, what I call your MAP, your midlife action plan.
Because usually people go to psychedelics out of desperation. The problem with that is when you're in the victor role, swinging from that victim space, you're still trying to make up for what you weren't.
You're all gonna f up. I wanted to call this book You're Fucked Up, and I still like it. Your self-awareness starts by studying your personality propensity. And all of a sudden you'll know, you go, that's so cute, I'm such a wreck.
Jesus never says, I'm your Lord and Savior. These are more the teachings of Paul. I'm following Yeshua. I didn't agree to follow Paul.
Inner peace is not the absence of chaos, it's the acceptance of it. Happiness is not the thing to seek. It's a side effect of pursuing meaning, of seeking connection, and you will develop it.
You did something that was a bit unconventional, unprecedented.
Mm-hmm.
And that in and of itself is very cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
The only runner ever to complete the GranFondo.
Yeah, it's the RBC GranFondo. It's based out of Vancouver, Canada, and it's North America's largest cycling race. So there's upwards of 10,000 cyclists every year that participate in this, and it was the 15th year of the RBC GranFondo. Yeah.
Okay. Let's just unpack the story a little bit. In kind of trying to think of the best way to kind of lay it out, but I'll throw the ball to you. Like, how do you share this story? It's so fascinating.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. Back in March, a friend of mine from university, I went to a local university in Vancouver, and she's a 2-time Olympian. She's an Olympic champion, mother of 2. 4 and 6-year-old, and she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And, I found out about it on Facebook, and she was actually opening up a jar of pickles, dislocated her shoulder, went to the hospital. Doctor assessed her and said, you didn't dislocate your shoulder while opening a jar of pickles. You actually broke your arm. Gosh. And they did further scans and discovered that she had 6 tumors from her head to her waist. And at that juncture, her sister posted a GoFundMe for like $5,000 the very next day. And I caught wind of both of them, the whole story and the GoFundMe, skipping through a couple of the nuances, but essentially ended up speaking with the family after 20 years. And while we were talking, came up that I shared with them that everyone has a cancer story nowadays. And sadly, and in order to raise significant amount of money for any kind of treatment, you're going to have to inspire people. Yeah. And that's when, off the cuff in conversation, I said, well, why don't I run Vancouver to Whistler? So, many of, the listeners might be familiar with Whistler. It's where the 2010 Olympic Games were held. It's a big ski resort on the west coast of Canada. And from Vancouver to Whistler, it's actually 1,900 meters of elevation. I think that's around 6,000 feet. Mm-hmm. And I just, I thought that would be a cool accomplishment and something that would test my mental and physical ceiling. But it was just off the cuff. It was just, just trying to draw out ideas of how they could and we could raise some money. And then it just unfolded from there.
You had a lot of synchronicity with that.
Mm-hmm. So the girls, Krista and her sister, she has 2 sisters, and Krista and one of her sisters were down in Florida getting some leading edge treatment. I think it costed upwards of $75,000 to get that treatment. And after the treatment, it was deemed, it went well, and doctors assessed things and conversed with the family and what have you. And it was understood that there was going to need to be further treatments, but they didn't have the funds to cover that. And they called me and asked me if I would, embark on that original idea that I had thrown out to them. And anyways, the first thing I asked them was how much money we have to raise. And the rounding error was like 125,000. And I said, well, that's pretty ironic because the distance from Vancouver to Whistler is 125 kilometers. Right. So, they're down in Florida still post-treatment, and I'm mulling everything over in my head. And the very next day, I'm going to date myself, but I'm leaving the gym pretty jacked up. Got another engine, as you know.
Yeah.
And Top Gun Anthem song comes on. And that fired me up even more. And I sent them a message, said, let's fucking go. Let's do this. And not a word of a lie, I pulled into a coffee shop and I Googled how many days I had to train. And it was 125 days. Yeah. So that was the birth of Project 125. Yeah. Pretty wild. Pretty wild.
So what did the training look like for you?
Well, then, things came in pretty hot and heavy, right? It was like, and it's about being integral with your word. As soon as that came out of my mouth.
Oh gosh.
I was like, there's no backing out now. And those that know me know that when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. There was countless people that told me that I was crazy right out of the gates, friends and others. In fact, I hired she's recognized as the 2-time ultra marathoner of the year, hired her as a coach. And after a week, she said that she couldn't do it for me. And it's my belief, that she didn't feel like I could be successful in that shorter period of time to ramp up my running in that. Like I said earlier, I've only run one marathon. I hadn't run even a 10K for 14 years. And now I'm embarking on this journey within 125 days to run over 3 marathons uphill. So after she, quit, if you will, understandable. She, wasn't right fit or whatever. Then I just put in the training program myself.
No shit.
Yeah. And I just said, you know what? I'm committed to this and I'm going to be able to, I'm a seasoned athlete. I'm a lifelong athlete. Used to compete on the international stage. I was for Team Canada for water polo. Mm-hmm. And I know that I can, I went to university for kinesiology. So I knew that I could put together a pretty, accurate training program to expedite this running and this distance. Now, it was dreaming the improbable, you know, people that train for marathons, it's 6 months to a year.
Yep.
And, the timeline ended up shrinking. I can share that part of the story.
Sure.
Yeah. So after the ultramarathoner coach, chose not to, venture on this journey with me. It was 2 weeks later that the founder of the RBC GranFondo, Neil McKinnon, called me on a Monday morning. I didn't know who it was. And he said that he was really inspired by our story that landed on his desk, that he has all the time in the world for women in sport, that he, has a lot of respect and honors our Olympic athletes that represent our nation, and was really inspired by the story of a friend in me to be willing to do this. And then he looked at the last name of Krista, maiden name is Galoyan. Krista's sister was a pro cyclist, was on Team Canada. And Krista's sister, Leah, was the very first winner of the inaugural RBC GranFondo 15 years prior, and still holds the women's record. I get goosebumps every time I share it. And so he asked me on that one phone call if I'd consider moving the timeline up by 2.5 weeks to be the first ever and sole runner of the RBC GranFondo course. Yeah. And that was like completely unsolicited. That was, just a gift, where everything just continued to align. And of course, we took him up on that opportunity to elevate the cause more, to be an honor to be the first runner of that event, first and only runner. Yeah. And that's where the training window shrunk even more.
Yeah, dude.
So now we're talking like, it was 100 days basically that I had to ramp up my running. I can proudly say within the couple months, we raised nearly $140,000. And then if you were adding all the in kind, it tipped the scales at $230,000. Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah. And, just huge shout out to my community who really stepped up. It just meant a lot. And, I think they believed in something much bigger. We kept saying that we're building a legacy for athletes faced with health adversities beyond the finish line. And that's exactly what we did. And it was a beautiful thing. And I'll say this, Cal, that, if you dream the improbable and you're fueled by something bigger than your own personal achievement, anything is possible. Yeah. And I had a fire in my belly to achieve something that everyone said that couldn't be done, whether that be running that distance, whether raising that amount of money, doing it in that short period of time, doing it this season. People even doubted that we'd be able to incorporate into the RBC GranFondo, and we did it all. And, it was about that relentless focus through all that turbulence, whether it was physical, mental, or spiritual. And it was just staying the course and having that unwavering belief that we could get it done. And we did.
And the best news is?
5 days out from my run, Krista had already had multiple treatments and she received her PET scan. And for those listeners in the cancer world, there's a term called scanxiety, which I've learned, where cancer patients continually have anxiety until they get their next scan. And it's called scanxiety. It's what they reference. And she got her scan back 5 days out from my run. And that on the paperwork, it said that all the procedures were deemed effective and there was no further cancer activity. Yeah.
I want to talk PsyOps.
Okay.
Because it's been in the zeitgeist currently.
Yeah.
And I wasn't familiar with it up until a couple of years ago, even. And I think for a lot of people, it's even been since the fall with like everybody talking, Sean Ryan's done a lot of work with this PsyOps and whatnot. And so you have a unique connection to the PsyOp world. And so I'm so curious about just unpacking this in a way that people can kind of wrap their head around how easily we are sucked into particular narratives and why, and who's doing it, why are they doing it? Is it all malevolent? Is some of it benevolent? The whole kit and caboodle.
Well, let's talk about our brains first. So most people live their life as though they have some kind of firewall or antivirus system in their own brain. And they believe that they're maybe not fully immune, but they believe that they're going to know it when they see it. I'm going to know PsyOps when I see it. I'm going to know that manipulation when I see it. And those are the most suggestible people. They're the easiest to manipulate. So like if you go out to Best Buy today and you picked up a new Windows computer, and I was like, hey man, you should download that McAfee antivirus program. You're like, nah, I don't believe in viruses, bro. That's the same thing with our brain. We're not alert to it because we believe that we're immune. So it's a fallacy that like I have a 60-second screen time limit on social media. I'm number one behavior guy in the world. Voted from some people, and my mom also says that.
Yeah, most importantly.
Yeah. And I'm terrified. I teach this stuff for a living, and I'm terrified of it. That's how powerful it is. The human brain versus a $1 trillion computer, you're not going to win. And the number one thing that I could say to start to kick off this PSYOPs thing is technology has outpaced the human brain's ability to adapt to it.
And it continues to go logarithmically, right?
Yeah. And our brains have not changed in 200,000 years. So we are at this level where it is an unbelievable, and I'm not just talking about social media, I'm talking about all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But we're at this modern time where the human brain can be hacked so easily. I teach brain hacking. That's kind of what I do. From sales teams to PSYOPs, it's the same thing. It's just a human brain. So PSYOPs really gets its start.
By the way, I know you realize this, but I don't know if everybody realizes how much of a mind fuck it is that you said that. If you think you can spot a PSYOP, like you are the most suggestible, like all of those people, myself included, are like, oh, that's a fucking PSYOP. Like, it's like, oh, it's such a, that just put me into a pretzel.
What
like,
I'm saying,
holy fuck.
No. I think you are able to spot them. But when you hear a person that says I can't be persuaded, I can't be influenced.
Oh, okay.
I'm immune to that stuff.
Yeah, I'm not immune to it. Okay.
That's where it gets dangerous.
Got it.
And like the guy, like, bro, I don't believe in computer viruses.
Yeah.
I won't get infected.
Yeah.
So when it comes to PSYOPs, you want to control a mammal brain. You're not thinking about human brain here. The mammalian brain makes all of your choices, all of your decisions. And it is absolutely in charge. So like if somebody says, well, no, the human brain's bigger, the neocortex is way bigger. Well, go ahead and hold your breath until you die. You can't. You can't will your way out of this mammalian part of our brain taking over. And this is our limbic system, the emotional regulatory part of our brain, going back into the brainstem. And if you just think of it as how do I take control of a dog? It's the same thing that take control of a human. Same thing for a horse or an animal, any mammal. And there's 4 things that take control of the mammalian part of the human brain. And it spells out the word fate, F-A-T-E, according to me anyway. And that's focus, authority, tribe, and emotion. If I use those 4 things, I can control a dog. I can train a dolphin. I could teach a killer whale at SeaWorld to jump through a hoop or whatever. Or I can control an entire population of human beings or one human. If I just gain control of focus, trigger their an ancestral response to authority, trigger their thinking that the tribe is all doing the same thing that they are, and this is the expected response of a tribe, and then trigger an emotional reaction. And I'm done. You have full control of a human being. So a lot of what PSYOPs are designed to do, most people talk about PSYOPs, but I think brainwashing falls into this. Influence and persuasion are also part of this that are outside of the PSYOP. So PSYOPs typically have an aim of getting a population to become more suggestible and destroying apathy, instilling apathy and destroying outrage. So high apathy, very low outrage. So if I can show you things all day long that make you upset, that make you pissed off, soon enough, you're going to be like, I can't do this anymore. Like, here's another thing that's pissing me off. No, I'm not. I'm just going to flip to the next video.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an engineered destruction of outrage and it's an engineered installation of apathy. That's step 1. Then the next step is called PDS, and that is pacify, distract, and sedate, in that order. So this is to where I'm going to engineer a culture of loneliness and then offer up all kinds of anesthetic.
Jeez. We've never seen that happen.
Right. Yeah.
Fuck.
So here's one thing that I would tell my kids growing up. And that is, if a product doesn't tell you the problem that they're trying to solve, you need to be terrified. Terrified.
Give me an example.
Facebook, Instagram. Even more than that, look at the VR goggles that all these companies have right now. Where do they tell you the problem they're solving? You look at Amazon, there's like, we're going to get shit to you faster. We're going to get it to your house. We're going to get it overnight. Returns are really easy. You want that shirt? I'll have it to you tomorrow. All of the problems are very clear and delineated of what they're solving.
Yeah.
You go look at Apple Vision Pro. You go look at this Facebook goggles and try to find where they tell you what problem they're solving. They don't, because it's loneliness.
Wow.
And it's becoming an anesthetic for dissatisfaction with life. So that's step one. That's pacify.
Okay.
Step two, distract. So with distraction, we're going to engineer and you always want to pay attention to timing. Is there a politician getting something revealed that needs to happen? Or is there an election coming up? Or is there a transition of power happening? And the distractions could be gas leaks at a factory somewhere, a train crashing and shooting smoke up into the air, just hypothetically.
Yeah.
Or maybe a helicopter running into a plane, hypothetically. And I'm not saying any of that's engineered. Maybe those are accidents. But the timing and context make it very suspicious, because there's other things going on, the drones in New Jersey and all of this other stuff. So anytime you see anything that looks like it might be a distraction, look at the timing. Like, what's going on page 4 of the news, not just the front page, but what's on page 4?
Because they're assuming they report whatever it is, they will bury that stuff.
Yeah. And then sedate is the final one. So the sedation agenda becomes overloading and overflowing everybody with information, and then using this tool that they actually invented for hypnosis, for clinical hypnosis, called fractionation. And fractionation is where I take your emotions way up, then I pull your emotions down. I take you in a high state of emotion and then down again. And every time I bring you down, you get more suggestible. So you can think of this in terms of, if you look over the last year, our society had these little high points and low, high and low. And every low gets a little bit lower than the last low. We become more suggestible and more suggestible and more compliant. And this has been demonstrated in study after study after study. That the more compliant we are, we will just blindly follow a tribe. We will ignore facts. We will agree to things that are absolutely stupid, because it's engineered suggestibility is what it is. So with the sedate system, I'm kind of losing track of what I'm talking about here, but we're constantly bombarding this emotional regulation. So in hypnosis, I would put you into a trance and then wake you up, just very briefly. So I might say, in a moment, I'll count from 1 to 5. Your awareness of the room is coming back. You're more aware of the sound of my voice. You're finally back in this chair here, just aware of the weight of your body, waking up just enough to open your eyes. Now open your eyes. Great. And sleep all the way down, back again. So like, we'll do this little up and down, partially wake you up. And then every time you go into hypnosis again, you're going way deeper.
Oh,
which means
it's super effective when you're trying to help someone.
Yes, very effective.
Yeah.
So 2 things are happening in that state. Number 1, your brain is going into the theta wave state. So it's around maybe 4 to 7 hertz of neural oscillations, or what they call brain waves outside of neuroscience. And the second thing that's happening is your brain, every time you're kind of going down into like that hypnotic state, and you're actually using real hypnosis, the brain is flooded with this neurotransmitter called GABA. And GABA stands for gamma aminobutyric acid. And it is the brain's number 1 inhibitory neurotransmitter. It's like the resident assistant in college that's walking around telling everybody to turn the music down. So it's like calming everything in the brain. So GABA is our safety chemical. It makes us feel safe. So that's basically what all hypnosis is theta brainwave state, increased levels of GABA. And if you want to get super scientific, there's something called homovinylic acid that we also see a spike in, but that's only if you suck some cerebrospinal fluid out during a lumbar puncture and measure that. But those things are happening in a clinical hypnosis setting, but they're happening in mass. They're happening to populations on a mass scale. And it is clear as day that it's being done. What's being obfuscated is the end result, the desired goal of these people and what they want to do with everything.
So AA has reportedly a less than 10% success rate if you gauge success in terms of helping someone to have long-term power over drinking. There was a book called The Sober Truth in 2012 by Dr. Lance Dodds, who worked out of Harvard's McLean Hospital. And he described AA's actual success rate as one of the worst in medicine. Now, that is not to say that it hasn't helped tens of millions of people. It absolutely has. But according to studies, it's been ineffective for 10 times as many people who've tried it. Willpower is probably the least effective strategy for trying to stop drinking.
White knuckling it. Yeah.
White knuckling it, willpower, motivation. A lot of studies suggest that has also a less than 10% success rate. And if you're someone who's ever tried to do moderation or dry January or sober October, you may have had some success. But when you do those challenges or you do moderation, again, it feels painful. You'd rather be drinking, which is why when you get to day 30 on those 30-day challenges, most people tend to celebrate with what? A drink.
Yes.
Because they associate not drinking with being in a prison.
Totally.
And what do all prisoners want to do? They want to get out of prison, right?
Yes.
So AA, rehab as well, very, very low success rate, less than 10%, and willpower and white knuckling at less than 10%. I have a program called Project 90. In 2022, the University of Washington conducted a scientific study on our stop drinking process. We use neuroscience, we use positive reinforcement, positive psychology. And the results of that was a 98% reduction in drinking from the study participants. Now, I can't compare it apples for apples because the less than 10% success rate for AA is judged over the course of at least a year, whereas our program was judged over 90 days. So it's not an exact comparison. However, a 98% reduction in drinking for a stop drinking program is profound. In fact, one of the world's leading addiction experts, Professor David Bellin out of Cambridge University, he read through the study and he described it as groundbreaking. Now, why is it so successful? There's a few reasons. In AA, for example, which is the traditional modality, and with white knuckling it and willpower, it's hard. It's tough. You're lamenting the past. You're thinking about what's wrong. You're making amends. In AA, you're surrendering to a higher power. You're working a 12-step program. And candidly, when you go to an AA meeting, you're probably sitting next to someone that you have absolutely nothing in common with. Nobody who's like in their 40s, 50s, 60s wanting to stop drinking alcohol really desires to sit next to a 19-year-old meth addict who's holding up a gas station. Now, of course, we support that person, but how can you relate to their life experience? It's completely different. So in our program, we put a bunch of like-minded people together. So it's not a community, it's a like-minded community. So we put together high achievers, executives, CEOs, business owners, salespeople, physicians, attorneys, lawyers, doctors. You'd be shocked at how many doctors have a bad relationship with alcohol. It's frightening. And we put them in a community and then we give them positive reinforcement and we show them what they're choosing. We invite them to choose an alcohol-free lifestyle as opposed to saying no to alcohol. So when we focus on what we want and what is desirable and what is fun, as opposed to focusing on what we don't want, which is painful, the mind and the body can head in this direction easily. There's a lot of study of neuroscience that shows that if you tell yourself not to do something, you tend to do that very thing. For example, if you're skiing down a mountain and you're saying to yourself, don't steer towards the trees or don't fall over, you tend to steer towards the trees and fall over. But why? Because you're telling yourself what not to do. And it's because what we understand about the human brain now is that the brain doesn't understand the don't do this. It only understands trees fall down. So over here in alcohol-free lifestyle, we say to them, no longer will you say, don't drink, I need to stop, I have to quit, I've got to be sober. Instead, we say, I'm only going to drink soda water, ice, and a piece of lime tonight. I'm going to walk up to the bar and confidently order a soda water with a splash of cranberry juice. I love going to sleep being alcohol-free. I love the feeling when I wake up in the morning having drunk soda water at dinner the night before. I'm choosing to get up in the morning and have appreciation instead of expectation. So we're choosing over here. And that encourages a group of people who are like-minded to have a common goal or heading in a common direction. And that is a heck of a lot easier than don't drink, I need to stop, I've got to be sober, oh, I've got a problem with alcohol. That keeps you stuck in the past and candidly keeps you stuck drinking. This creates a new habit, a new way of thinking with positive psychology, new healthy habits, gratitude, sunlight, walking, mobility, focusing on a great night's sleep, conscious communication, personal development, growth mindset. Now we're heading towards this direction. And now the consequence of that is we're alcohol free.
Wow. And I got to imagine that it does not take but a day or two for people to be like, this is a completely different lens that I'm looking at the world through. And so then that just begets more like, I don't want to say compliance, but more just going towards those things that you want.
Yes. It's just smooth sailing the whole way. It's like, where are we going? We're going here. Okay, great. As opposed to, oh, where do we not want to go? Okay, don't go that way. Don't go that way. Right. Oh, why are we going this way?
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
It's so, it just gets into our field. The don't, you're right. I can totally sense that. It's like, don't go to the bar. Don't look at the alcohol. It's just those words, bar, alcohol, are just spinning in your mind.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And also, I would submit when we focus too much on the past and we're lamenting in the past, as you do a lot in AA, it keeps us stuck in an identity.
Okay, so this is, I've never sat in those meetings, but the thing that I've never been able to wrap my head around is, hi, my name is Cal and I'm an alcoholic. I mean, just grounding into that identity. And it just seems like so outdated.
There are millions of people walking around mistakenly believing that they are an alcoholic. You are not an alcoholic. In fact, in the modern world, in modern medicine, the term alcoholic no longer exists. It's now alcohol use disorder. Okay. Now, for years, it was, I'm an alcoholic. I experience alcoholism. Alcoholism runs in my family. But in modern medicine, that is gone. It's gone. And why? Because it keeps people stuck in an identity that doesn't serve them. You are not an alcoholic. You may be experiencing an alcohol use disorder, but that's temporary. Whereas I'm an alcoholic suggests, I'm a victim of this disease. I'm powerless over this disease, which is what they do in AA. Cal, I would submit you never wanted to walk into an AA meeting and say, hi, my name's Cal and I'm an alcoholic. And that probably didn't resonate with you. Even if you were drinking too much for an extended period of time, saying I'm an alcoholic still doesn't resonate with you. And yet people are mistakenly believing that they are, being stuck in that identity and therefore taking actions which perpetuate this, I'm a victim, I'm stuck, I can't drink, I need to stop. And then of course that becomes easier then to drink because you're focusing on what you shouldn't do.
Yeah, back to that point. Yeah.
Back to the perpetual cycle. And so I noticed that you used the phrase sober and sobriety previously. We don't use that verbiage at Alcohol-Free Lifestyle.
Okay.
We don't say sober, sobriety. We don't say clean. We don't say recovery. We don't use power. We're powerless over a disease. Powerless. You are powerful.
Yeah.
That's the change. That's the difference. You're powerful. Imagine walking around saying, I'm powerless over this disease. What a crock of shit. You are powerful. And I think that with some very simple mind rewiring techniques, knocking alcohol off the altar that we put it there and we're bowing down to it and understanding the true health consequences of consuming it, but then also appreciating how much better life gets to be without it, we can very quickly rewire our whole mindset around alcohol and choose easily and effortlessly to be alcohol free, as opposed to, I've really got to struggle to be sober. I'm in recovery.
It's heavy. Yeah.
It can be, especially for folks who have been in AA and it's worked, or for folks who are related to folks who've gone AA and it's worked. Because when I say that, the feedback I get is that it's very challenging. And I get criticized a lot by what I refer to as AA disciples. And they say that I'm causing genocide because I'm out there introducing other ways in which to get power over alcohol, which aren't AA. So they say, you're killing millions of people by encouraging them to turn their back on AA. AA is free. It's helped millions of people. I said, I agree. It's free and it's helped millions of people. But that represents 7% of the people who've tried it. It's failed for 93% of people who've tried it. Here are some other ways. Not just my way, by the way, not just my stop drinking process. You can get there through what you were referencing earlier. Saunas, cold plunges, sunlight, gratitude, journaling, like-minded community. If you're a man and you're overweight and you want to get six-pack abs, hang out with 5 other guys who've got six-pack abs. In 3 months, you'll have six-pack abs because that's being in a like-minded community.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. I want to ask, I'm guessing this is the case, but have you tried this? I'm sure people have reached out to you and say, I'm alcohol free and I want to try this with cigarette smoking or some other thing that they're struggling, that they're feeling disempowered by. What has been kind of your experience with those things?
Same process.
It is.
Yeah. Works for sex addiction, porn, cigarettes, marijuana, weed, video games. Same process. It's just a rewiring of the mindset. Instead of, I'm giving up this thing, what are you getting over here?
Yeah.
Instead of, I've got to sacrifice video games and porn and weed and et cetera. It's like, I get clarity and focus and energy and great sleep and a great new friends network and joy over here. And I get that it's challenging because cultural conditioning has us believe that alcohol is fun and weed is fun and video games are fun, but the consequences are pretty dire. There was a 2022 study out of the UK of 35,000 middle-aged adults, and it showed that even one seemingly innocent drink per night, so just 7 standard drinks a week, was enough to destroy gray and white matter in the brain. The headline for that is that 1 drink a night causes some level of brain degeneration. That should be a wake-up call. Also, the American Psychiatric Association has a 10-point checklist to determine if someone has an alcohol use disorder. Let me ask you this question, Cal. Did you ever think or realize that you were drinking too much and you had a desire to stop?
Yes.
And did you have that feeling for many months, different phases of your life?
For sure.
So according to the American Psychiatric Association, just because you answered yes to 2 of those 10 questions, you were experiencing a mild alcohol use disorder. Let that sink in. Because I would submit most people are drinking considerably more than what you were ever drinking. Most people are pouring themselves a bottle of wine each night and thinking it's no big deal, or going out and having a couple of drinks each night. No big deal. I'm fine. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not waking up in a ditch. Well, according to the American Psychiatric Association, you already have at least a mild alcohol use disorder. And according to what we now know about modern science, that is compromising your brain. It's definitely affecting your sleep. And when your sleep is affected, that causes what? Irritability, frustration. You snap at your wife or your husband. You're not as present with your kids. You're tired and lethargic, so you reach for a sugary food to give you a little bit of an energy boost.
Yeah, I used to love that.
Now you put on a few more pounds from the extra calories. Now you start to feel a little bit more irritable. Maybe you're a little envious of other people. Now you're exhausted by mid-afternoon. And what do you start doing? Dreaming about having a drink so you can relieve yourself of the irritability and stress and anxiety that drinking has been causing.
Absolutely.
had a background in metaphysical books. And, I was from a generation where you read Ram Dass and Alan Watts in the morning, and then you went to a Vietnam anti-war protest in the afternoon. And I told you about my living in New Mexico. We were all reading Isaac Asimov and, and doing the kinds of things that enhance the reading.
Yeah.
So I certainly had a background. But what happened for me, and I had studied a lot of comparative religion in school, including here, the University of Texas one summer. But when I picked up the Course in Miracles, I was just at somebody's house at a party, and the Course uses traditional Christian terms, but in decidedly non-traditional psychotherapeutic ways. Well, I'm Jewish. And even though in school I had read St. Thomas and Aquinas and St. Augustine, St. Bonaventure, I had read quite a bit of Christian theology and loved it. But this was my personal life. So I assumed this was like a quote unquote Christian book. And so I was intrigued, but I just thought, well, that's a Christian book. When I was growing up, I'm Jewish. They read that one, darling, and we read this one. It was nothing good, bad, judgmental. It was just, but then a year later, I picked it up again. I picked it up really for myself the first time. My boyfriend brought it over to the house, and you find out very quickly, like in the first few pages, this is not a religion. This is a psychological mind training, it calls itself, on the relinquishment of fear and the acceptance of love back into your heart. So once I realized, this is not asking me to convert my religion, but then I knew that I had found, I was at home. I think there was one truth with a capital T, and it spoke in many different ways. Many of the principles in the Course certainly doesn't claim a monopoly on truth, and it doesn't claim to be for everybody. Many of the principles that I read about in the Course, I'd read about elsewhere. But what the Course gave me is practical ways to apply what I knew. The image I got, which I think I wrote about in one book, the image I got was, imagine a cathedral like Notre Dame, let's say a magnificent cathedral. And is a huge flight of stone steps in the front of the cathedral. And it was like my whole life, I felt. I had been trying so hard to get into the cathedral, and my knees were bloody and my elbows were bloody. At times I just crawled up those steps. But even when I got to the top, and I'm trying to open the door, it's locked. There are chains and I can't unlock it. That's what the Course in Miracles did for me. It gave me the key to unlock the door. The door is the person standing in front of you, the person you're even thinking about. If you're judging them, if you're blaming them, if you're attaching yourself to identifying their guilt, if you're seeing them as who they were yesterday rather than who they were in this moment, you can't open the door. The door lies in infinite compassion and forgiveness of the person in front of you. Period. End of story. And that's really very practical. It's just a change in your own mind. But it makes all the difference whether you're going to be open to miraculous possibilities of healing and repair and positivity, or you're going to live a life where you're constantly deflecting the good that you could otherwise have.
And so you've worked with this ever since. Yeah, it's almost been 50 years, right?
Yeah, over 40 years. Of course, one might say, well, shouldn't she be an enlightened master by now? And to which I respond, well, this stuff is hard.
It's hard. Oh my gosh.
Truth is simple, but life is very complicated. And it is true. The Course in Miracles says that enlightenment begins as abstract understanding. And we're living at a time now where enough of us have the abstract understanding. Enough of us have read all the books. We've all listened to the same tapes. The era of data collection is over. We're now in a period of application. And the application, so the Course says that abstraction takes a journey without distance from the head to the heart. So you have the data, you have the information. If it was as simple as that, then I would be, right? Then you have to live your life. And the idea is that, and this is interesting in terms of what you and I were talking about before, every situation we're in says, well, Can you do it here? Can you do it here? So you say, so the last time that this kind of situation happened in your life, how'd you do? And you might say, well, I think I did pretty well. It's as though the universe is saying, can you do it even better this time? And the situation, by definition, will tempt you to fall into the ego patterns.
Yes.
And life is about saying, I'm willing to see this differently. So, for instance, if you take a relationship, a child with anyone else, you put it on the altar. Now, what does that mean? The altar is in our minds. I'm willing to give it up to a higher space. And then when you're talking about something like a miracle, you're saying, I am willing for a divine intercession from a thought system beyond my own to show me what I'm not seeing, to guide me psychologically. Then it'll be a book, conversation with a friend, podcast. Some of you go, oh. And we heal in life one aha at a moment, at a time. So I think that that's what's going on always. The Course says we all have a highly individualized curriculum, whatever situation we're in. And I think that goes back to what I was saying before. It's not out there. It's your situations in your life right now, this moment, the people you know, everyone you're thinking of, as well as what you're doing. It's all right here. And what I'm sensing, I mean, obviously, collectively, we're going through a lot right now. That goes without saying, but in this country and around the world. But I almost get a sense, I do get a sense, you know how with a hologram, if there's a hologram of this room and then there's three of us in here, instead of you being a third of it and you being a third of it and me being a third of it, each of us contain the entirety.
Okay.
So I feel like all of us, everyone I know anyway, or have witnessed, are going through this very profound phase transition from my world as it was to my world as it could be.
I feel that personally, just
I don't know anyone who doesn't.
Deep in it and challenging.
Try running for president, Cal.
What's that?
Try running for president.
Yeah, so I want to get...
you want a few challenges put in your way?
Well, so that's like, I'm so fascinated to hear about any of that experience. Like, how does... I know you ran for, was it the House in California?
Yeah, I ran for the House. It was very silly.
What inspired that? Like,
Pardon?
I want to run for the House. Like, how does one make that decision?
This was my experience. I grew up in a home. I grew up in Houston, born and raised in Houston. I grew up in a home that was very politically, economically, socially, all of that conscious. When as I mentioned earlier, we would read Alan Watts. And when I was in college, we would read Alan Watts in the morning, Ram Dass in the morning, go to political anti-war rallies in the afternoon. There was no sense at that time that you had to pick a lane, right? It was just a counterculture. It was everything. It was music. It was culture. It was politics. It was sex. It was everything. It was just a counterculture. We are countering what was. And nobody felt you're not a multidimensional being with a lot of interests. So as my life unfolded, particularly my interest in the Course in Miracles, my interest in metaphysics, I felt that I could do the greatest good in the area of higher consciousness, spirituality, and personal growth. That was where my path, where my Dharma led me. Early in my career, I was very involved with the AIDS crisis. And then out of that, it just unfolded organically that I would have a lot of experience with people who were going through the darkest hours of their lives. Now, this is in the 1980s. But in the 1980s, what I noticed was that for the vast majority of people I found myself working with, this particular crisis, it could be disease, it could be divorce, it could be bankruptcy, it could be whatever, was an exception and not a rule in their lives. Something changed in this country in those 20 years. By the end of the 1990s, getting into the early 2000s, more and more people who I would encounter in the hour of their agony, the aspect of pain, difficulty, and crisis was the rule. It wasn't the exception. It wasn't just that they had cancer. It's that they didn't have health care. It wasn't just that they couldn't find a job. It was that they couldn't support their family on just one job. It wasn't just that they didn't have a job. It was that they felt their kids wouldn't respect them. I saw how multidimensional the suffering was out there. And I could not ignore at that point how much bad public policy had to do with it. And then the system that created so much of this, people not having health care, people not having economic opportunities, would say to people like myself, see if you can make them more resilient. See if you can help them feel better. And I went, what's going on here? And then also private charity. So I'm very involved in founding nonprofits, Project Angel Food in LA, very involved as a nonprofit. We're gonna with charity. And I began to realize something had gone so askew in this country that no amount of private charity or counseling could compensate for a basic lack of social justice. And I remember once a U.S. senator said to me when I was working as a non-denominational minister in Michigan, Miss Williamson, do you have any ideas what we should do about the mental health crisis? I remember saying to her, yeah, why don't you stop driving everybody crazy? You make it so damn hard. You make it so damn hard. And then that same system, and this is on high gear today, and I see it here in Austin. Okay? You're smart. You're attractive. You're on the ball. You'll be fine. What are you complaining about? And this is going to only get worse in the next few years because that's definitely what someone like Vivek Ramaswamy is all about. My point, you shouldn't have to be brilliant. You shouldn't have to be beautiful. You shouldn't have to be talented at art or music or dancing or sports to be able to work at one job and have dignified pay and be able to support your family. And I just couldn't keep my mouth shut. And we were talking on the way here. Is it that she's a woman? Is it that she's a Jew? No, it's that she's a Texan. You put those two together, that's a broad who's going to speak her mind.
I think wisdom is one of the biggest pillars of this life that we come to experience in this earth game, this earth school. It's like there's just so much wisdom that we could tap into. And what really is wisdom? Well, wisdom is like you learn the knowledge, and that's one part of it, but you have to apply it in your life. You have to embody it. Otherwise, it's just kind of like information, right?
Yeah.
So wisdom is really like embodying these core values, these core principles, and the Bible is filled with it. It's awesome. And I know everybody, has their own religious views, spiritual views, and that's great. I'm not here to convince anybody about anything. I'm just sharing my experiences. I went to church similar to you. I love the music. I felt all these feelings come up, and it's like, it's beautiful. And like, it was a spiritual experience. And then I'm listening to the pastors, and they're sharing these wisdoms. Some things are hitting really deep. Some things are not really hitting at all. But one thing that kept hitting over and over was the teachings of Jesus. I was like, wow, this Jesus guy is incredible. Like everything he says is just so profound and sometimes so simple, but sometimes there's layers onto it. And I just got really deep into the teachings of Jesus, and the way I look at it, Cal, is like, I like having role models. If I'm going to play basketball, I'm going to study Michael Jordan, I'm going to study Steph Curry, like I'm going to follow how they play. If I'm going to, play poker, I'm going to watch, Doyle Brunson or, one of these guys. So it's all this kind of stuff. If I'm going to do martial arts, I'm going to study Bruce Lee or John Jones. And if I'm going to study how to be an amazing human being that's spiritually enlightened, I'm going to study Jesus. Like he's, pretty well universally accepted as the most amazing, spiritual master ever, to say the least. Some people think he's God. Some people say he's the Son of God, but everybody pretty much agrees this guy was an amazing spiritual master and spiritual teacher. So it really got me diving deep into what Jesus said, and following his word and all this kind of stuff. And it was it just got better and better and better. And the guy is really all about, he has amazing wisdoms. Everything he says is so wise because he really embodied it. He lived it out. He was truly like the embodiment of wisdom, which I believe is the one, core pillar. And the other core pillar that's just as equal, if not, it's just as equal, is love. It's you have wisdom and you have love. The love of wisdom and the wisdom of love, and I believe Jesus was the guy that embodied this more than anybody that I could find. We have the Buddha, we have the Krishna, amazing as well. They're all in the same building, same floor, they're all hanging out. It's wonderful. I'm not trying to, say one is better than the other. No, I'm just saying everything is, Jesus, Yeshua talks about, and he lived it out, and the Bible goes into this. And then my experience was, okay, so I want to learn as much about Jesus as I can, so I'm doing precept Bible study, which is like the most in-depth Bible study you could do. We go line by line, word by word, and you translate the words to try to get to the deeper meaning of it all, because the Bible has been translated, many versions, like hundreds of versions, and it goes back from different languages. And, as you can imagine, as you're translating from different language to language and then different version to version, it kind of changes. There's
you get a couple. I see. There's right nuance between this word means a couple different things in this language, and then you get a bit of a telephone deal.
Yeah, a bit of a broken telephone thing going on, and sometimes you get to it and it's like, wow, that's not what it originally said at all, and that's kind of alarming. You're like, wait a second, because a lot of people that are all about the Bible are like, this is the word of God and there's no ifs, ands, or buts on this thing. Okay, great. But when you really start to break it down, you see that there's some things, broken telephone, that's going on here. So it's like, okay, that's a bit alarming for me. And it just got me to dive deeper and deeper into it. And one thing I found was everything that Jesus says, for me personally, just resonated as absolute truth. Absolute truth. And then when things, were said or shared, whether it's Bible study or church, that were going against or like contradicting or different or just like distorted from what Jesus says, it was like, wait a second here, like Jesus is saying this, and over here, this is different than what Jesus says. Jesus never says, I'm your Lord and Savior. Jesus never says, like, all you got to do is believe in me and all your sins will be washed away, or, this kind of stuff. These are more the teachings of Paul. For those that don't know, like, Paul wrote more than half the New Testament. And there's a lot I could get into about Paul, but Paul is not Jesus. I'll just say that. Paul was a self-proclaimed apostle.
Okay, so explain that, because that it could be just a throwaway line, but there he had his apostles.
Yeah, he had his disciples.
Yeah,
he had the people that were the closest to him that he hand chose. I don't think any Bible scholar will dispute that. Like, Jesus had his close circle, right? And his people that he chose,
His kind of men's group.
He's got his men's group that they followed him everywhere, and they gave up their lives to be with him, and they studied. He was their teacher, and they followed him around, and they got to be really close with him. So it's like, put yourself in that position. You have your core group of people. And as Jesus' life, progressed, he really, bonded with some of these people. Like, one of them is James, his blood brother. Like, a lot of people don't talk about that or don't know about that, but James, like, his blood brother, closest person to him. And as Jesus is, there's evidence that Jesus says, if you're going to follow anybody after I die, listen to James. Like, James is the closest one to me. Okay, great. John, his other best friend, John, the one that Jesus loved, they say in the Bible. Like, that's how John refers to himself, like the one that Jesus loved. Everybody knew John and Jesus were super close. And Peter, the other one that, Peter said, Jesus says he's the rock, he's the one that's really driving the message home. He's very, he was illiterate, but he had the message, so all these people really, carried on the message of Jesus after. And then here comes Paul, who was once named Saul. And Saul, devoted the most early part of his life to killing the early followers of Jesus. It's a bit of a red flag.
And just so for people who don't have much of a grasp of the Bible, or, so what was Paul's ideology at that point?
Yeah. So he was against Christianity. He was against early form of Christianity, Jesus and of Nazareth, Jesus and the Nazarenes. And it went against the church, went against Judaism and this kind of stuff. So it was like a threat. It was a threat to the church. And he devoted his life to killing hundreds, maybe thousands of early, Jesus followers.
Not great.
Not great, to say the least. It's like, it's pretty wild stuff, essentially like you're a serial killer. If you're killing hundreds of people, thousands of people, like it's pretty intense stuff. And then anyway, he's going through the desert, and he's on the desert, and he's on a horse, and he gets this vision of Jesus. Jesus comes to him in a vision and says, dude, what are you doing? Like, you're killing all my people. And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, you're killing all my followers. And he has this revelation that he's like, holy shit, I fucked up, pardon my French. But he realizes, like, Jesus just came to him and he's like, yeah, whatever you're doing is totally wrong and unacceptable. So the guy goes and hides for 3 years and basically probably has this like mental breakdown, realizing like, wow, everything I've been doing is incorrect. And then he changes his name from Saul to Paul, and he reemerges, and he self-proclaims himself as the apostle that's going to convert Gentiles, non-Jews, into followers of Jesus. This is what he says is his role, is I'm going to convert people into this new way, and all you have to do is believe that Jesus is your Lord and Savior, and all your sins are forgotten, and you will get into heaven. And if you don't, you'll burn in hell forever. No big deal, So
only recruiting Gentiles, not trying to convert Jews.
That was his role, exactly. And there's an interesting point about that, because there's a part in the Bible where Paul is in Romans, where a lot of Bible scholars say, oh, Romans is the best book and all this kind of stuff. Because at that point, Paul it's the only time where he's talking to Jews and Gentiles at the same time. And you could tell in that one, he's working the crowd. So he's saying a lot of good stuff about the law, and then he's talking to the Gentiles, and he kind of like, you could tell he's working the crowd, and you could kind of see into Paul how he is, because he's a very smart guy. He's very well educated. He's very clever. And but anyway, yeah. So then he goes, and that's his role, is to convince the Gentiles that Jesus is the guy. I agree. Jesus is the guy. He's the best. But he's also now coming out with this message that Jesus is your savior, and he died for your sins, and that's all you have to really do is believe in that, and don't worry about your actions. Don't necessarily worry about your how you treat people and all this kind of stuff. Like, yeah, it's good to be a good person, but it doesn't matter. You're a worthless sinner anyway, is kind of the message that he goes on. And I'm oversimplifying,
which I appreciate,
for the people that don't know. And I'm sure I'll, get a bunch of backlash from that. And that's totally okay. Like I'm just saying my experience, and I would challenge anybody to show where Jesus says, I am your Lord and Savior, where Jesus says, all you have to do is believe in me and you'll get into heaven. Jesus actually said the opposite of that in Matthew. He said, not all those that call me Lord will get into heaven. He's like, you didn't feed me when I was hungry. You didn't give me water when I was thirsty. You didn't, give me clothing when I was naked. And he said this to the apostles, his true disciples. And they're like, what do you mean, Lord? We were always there for you. And he's like, no, you didn't feed the poor. You didn't give them water. You didn't give them clothing when they're naked. And basically you're doing this to me, Jesus is saying, like, I am in all these people. I am the presence of God, and the presence of God is in all these people. So if you treat people like that, the people that actually need help the most, if you ignore them, you're ignoring me. So like, just because you call me Lord doesn't mean you'll get into heaven, which is essentially the opposite of what Paul is saying, is like, yeah, no, it doesn't matter what you do. All you have to do is say Jesus is your homeboy, and there's, you'll get into heaven. And then I'll just close it with this, is like, if you ever watch any of these near-death experiences, like there's a bunch of them on online where people actually die, they cross over, they left their body, and they all have a very, very similar experience where they go and they're shown like they're shown their life story, whether it's from an angel or a Jesus type person, a figure, or, some people think it's God himself, and they're showing them this, their whole life, every moment of their life, how they showed up and how they treated people and all this kind of stuff. And God is not judging them. They actually judge themselves because they're seeing how they showed up. And there's a bunch of people that they're like, well, I believe in Jesus. Jesus is my guy. And the angel or the being or whoever it is, God, universe, is like, yeah, so what? Like, you missed the point. So it's like, this is kind of like evidence to me of like, that's what, these people actually died. They went to the other side, and I know from my experience, with plant medicine and psychedelics and psychonauting for many years, like there's definitely another side. There's definitely a spiritual world out there, spiritual realms. It's very real. And for me personally, everybody teach their own. But for me personally, Cal, I'm not going to take my chance and just say, yeah, I believe in this, when I've seen so many contradictions and so many different versions of the Bible and so many edited things. It's like, no, I'm going to be of service. I'm going to be the best human being that I can. I'm going to actually follow the way of Jesus the way that I can. I'm following Jesus. I'm following Yeshua. I didn't agree to follow Paul. And I don't know how that all happened, but I have an idea. So yeah.
Guys are kind of wired to chase salary and title, if you will, and chase that. And that can be very one-dimensional. And to your point, a lot of other things can fall by the wayside. And that's where this whole concept of the 6 F's came from for me, which was around 47, same age as when my dad died. And I'm sitting there and I'm a partner in this company, and like you, and I've got the book of business and the commissions rolling in, and I'm, from the outside looking in, everything looks great. I'm not feeling that way.
Everybody thinks that you got it fucking licked.
Yeah, and I'm not as healthy as I can be, and I'm drinking too much, and I'm not as present with the kids, and with Kate, but we're going to dinner, and the guys are at one end and the women are at the other end. It's very it is. It's very formulaic, totally. Out there, and it's conformity, complacency, redundancy, and what I deducted, it's mediocrity.
Yeah,
it's mediocre.
Yes,
and
going through the motions, really.
And mediocrity happens by default. Maximization is what happens by design. And I had no design.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. I'm just following the path, going along with it. Misery loves company. Nobody really talks about it because what do you have to complain about?
Yes.
Overall.
That's the one that gets a lot of us is, what do I have to, like I was depressed in the early 2000s. And I'm thinking, what do I have to be depressed about? Like, I got a great wife, I got a new kid, I'm making a bunch of money, I'm a partner, It's like, that's not how it works, dude.
Yeah.
At all.
It's not. And you can't escape it. And you're not going to get a lot of sympathy either.
No.
And you can't really share it with your partners, or probably the other trait. At least I couldn't.
I was fortunate. The main partner, Will Hobart, was an incredible father figure, even though he wasn't that much older than me, just a real man of integrity. And so when I was struggling, I'm like, I'm not doing great, dude. And so he was amazing.
Which is an amazing step to take. And most guys don't have that person to go to, or don't have the courage to take that step.
Yeah.
I didn't. I hid it. Which is, I'm not going to tell my partners about this because I could lose equity. We haven't, exited yet. I could, be viewed as the guy that doesn't really want to be here, is unhappy.
Oh, yeah.
Looking for the door. We don't, And I wasn't going to bring it
By the
home.
way, don't get me wrong, because over the last couple of years, when I've been under a lot of anxiety and stuff that arguably I should have shared with Peyton, I didn't. So I had my own version of that, like the shame or whatever, like me being exposed as a fraud and not being able to provide, and like all the stories that I told myself. So I would just keep it right here, and then in keeping it here, I was distancing her from knowing me. And anyway, so
I didn't bring it home either.
Yeah.
So it's like, I didn't bring it to work. Didn't really share it with any of my friends because I didn't want to be the guy. It's like, oh, here comes Greg again. You know, where you get the Heisman, you're like, oh, not that guy. You know, those guys like, every time you see it, it's like,
fucking Debbie Downer.
Yeah. Oh, don't be that guy. And then I didn't bring it home because I didn't want to burden Kate with it.
Yeah.
And and certainly wasn't going to burden my kids, you know, with it either. So you just internalize it. And then you try to find out what's for it. Some healthy, some unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
So for a while, that's drinking.
Yes.
You know, and you come up with a routine, and I would come home and I would pour the tequila and I'd walk the dog and I'd say, I'm only having one drink, but the one drink you pour is the equivalent of like 8, you know, and the dog walks become longer and around the neighborhood. And you do this. And then if you turn that dial down, you realize that's not good for you. Then you go into the gym. And that's when I got really into CrossFit. Like, I'm going to go get my health back. Yeah. So now I'm over indexed in that direction. And all I'm doing is crushing it all day.
Yes.
And then everything else starts to hurt, you know, like, and everything is kind of out of whack. There's no balance or harmony here at all. And at a certain point, you just get to, and mine was, look, 47, 10-year anniversary with my firm, same age as when my dad died, sitting in the parking lot, looking at this building, my office on the 25th floor, multi-million-dollar book of business, not wanting to go inside.
Wow. Yeah.
And going, okay, like, is this the best it's going to be?
Oh, fuck yeah.
Like that City Slickers movie moment. This is the best I'm going to look, the best I'm going to feel, the best I'm ever going to do. And it ain't that great.
Yeah.
This is not it.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do now? You know, come on, genius. What are you going to do now? And how are you going to figure this out? And I just wrote down on a piece of paper, like, what was important. I wrote down a few things. Knowing what's important is what's most important. Okay, what does that mean? Can I actually take some time and answer that question?
Was there something that prompted you to do that? Was there something you read or someone like, or does that just, it just came to you like, I need to get this on paper? Was it part of a practice?
I'm not even a writer. Again, we go back to like the movie now. Like it was like the Jerry Maguire thing. Like all of a sudden shit starts spilling out of you. I'm like, wait a minute. I have to start right now. Okay.
Yeah.
Because like what's going on here in this parking lot, like this can't happen, you know, anymore. So like, what am I going to do about it? And I don't have anybody that I really feel like I can ask. So like, I'm Googling, I'm writing, I'm like, and I just started writing some stuff down. That's why I finally got into the building and I shut the door in my office. And I'm like, the only thing I'm working on right now is myself.
Wow.
No call, no anything, blank sheet of paper. It became multiple sheets of paper, piles of crumpled paper. It was like, okay, knowing what's important is what's most important. Let's put that on the wall. I got to figure out what that is, what's really most important. Number 2, if you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. I have no idea where I'm going.
Yeah.
I'm rudderless, you know, right now. Number 3, okay, aggregate, curate, eliminate. I can take from all this stuff that's out there. I got to curate it down to what works. And I got to start eliminating the shit that doesn't work because everything was getting in. There was no filter on this. Number 4, show me your calendar. I'll show you your priorities.
Yeah.
I don't know where that came from or who said that first or whatever. I don't know. But it was like, I had nothing scheduled. I was completely reactive constantly. And then the last one was grace, gratitude, and latitude, that I got to stop beating myself up for chasing all of these things and thinking I got to do everything and be everything to everyone. Once I had those 5 rules, I went into figuring out, okay, how am I going to follow them? What are they going to? And that first question, knowing what's important is what's most important. That's what became the 6 Fs. It's not salary and title. It's family and fitness and finances and food and fashion and fun, all the shit that I'm into.
I love you put fashion in there because this is an important thing to me too.
People ask me about that all the time. They're like, what's with the fashion? First of all, it's an F. It's really more about style. And I broke it in. But it's really about like when you talk about family always being first, that was the North Star. Fitness, which is really health, sustainability, longevity. What does real health look like?
Yeah.
Finance. What does that really mean? For me, it's like, what does wealth really look like? For me, it's like, have enough money to do what you want with who you want, the way you want for as long as you want.
Yeah.
And you can quantify that. Hey, if you don't want to fly private, you don't need as much money.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't need a 10,000 square foot house. You don't need as much money. It just depends on what you want. I'm not judging anybody.
Yeah.
But what does it look like for us as a family? Food is just it's nutrition. What are you putting in your body? What choices are you making for energy in that? Fashion was style. It was confidence. I was wearing clothes I didn't like every day. That was the problem. Really? I was getting up and having to put this suit on and play this role and do all this.
Yeah.
And I fucking hated it. Some guys put on the navy blue suit and they feel like it's a power suit and they rock that shit.
Yeah.
I fucking hated it.
Yeah.
Hated having to dress the part, look the part, shave, do all these different things, like being controlled in any way. So I wanted to ditch that. Yeah. So it was about style and personal confidence and brand and having the autonomy. That's what it was about for me, and the confidence of feeling good about what you were in. And then fun, I was just having all the wrong kinds.
Yeah.
So what does fun look like the right way? What does it look like to try new experiences or climb a mountain or actually take that family trip, and do these? I was just having a lot of the wrong kinds of fun. So that became like, hey, this is what the portfolio should look like. Yeah. And get back to your seasonality. It's not a perfectly balanced portfolio. It ebbs and flows around there, but it's not an over-index portfolio. As you said, like if you're getting an A in finance, but you're getting an F, legitimate F in family.
Yeah.
What's your cumulative GPA?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now we're back to you being a C guy. Now you're mediocre again. So the idea was, what could my cumulative GPA be?
Yeah.
If I really applied myself in all of these areas, and what would my life look like by design if I approached it this way? And those just became the questions I started asking everybody, anybody I could. How do you see it? How do you do it? What's your perspective?
First of all, people don't know what integration is.
Oh, there you go.
They don't. And so when you have a lens for what integration is, then you can move into integrating. But people are like, oh, you need to go for integration. What's that? Well, you sit in a circle and you talk about your stuff and then you go home. Integration for us at the Condor approach and for the work that we do with individual people is wholeness. When you are disintegrated, there are things that have been broken apart. There are things that have been separated from one another. So when you bring them all together, they are cohesive. And there's information that we have that's foundational, intuitive. It's the knowing that we have as human beings when we come onto this planet. And we are taught from programming and societal dynamics to disintegrate from your internal knowing to behave and to integrate with society.
To be in order.
To be in order. And so you've integrated with societal rules, but you've disintegrated with your inherent self. And when we have psychedelic experiences, we are able to disintegrate from those things and actually see the foundational self for a while. Oh my gosh, this is who I am. This is what I am. And then after the psychedelic experience, you go back into the other integration. And so you become disintegrated from yourself, integrated into society or constructs. And this is where, how do you get the foundational self and the societal constructs to work together? That's where we create a different type of wholeness that people are unaware of. And the biohacking and the fitness and getting your nutrition together is one aspect of becoming whole on a physical level. But if there are aspects of you as an individual that have been pushed by the wayside, buried, put into different areas of your fascia for addressing later on, those things need to be integrated. And once you have a psychedelic experience and you're able to see all of this, and then you go back to your job, you go back to your career, you go back to your caustic relationships, right? That with other people who are disintegrated, then most people just sink back into the old patterns. And so you're neuroplastic after a psychedelic experience, which means you're malleable, which means you can get embedded even deeper into the old constructs and systems. Starting to have awareness that the sandcastle has actually been dismantled into all these different parts. How do you want to rebuild that sandcastle? How much water do you want to add? Do you want to just use a pail to shape it? Or do you want to get little sticks and kind of really make things intricate? This is where integration is. And once you're able to see from different lenses in the psychedelic experience, what tools do you have to actually see yourself outside of it? So there's something called the drama triangle that has three corners. It's a triangle. And the way we've kind of reframed it into what we call the oppression trap triangle. And so there's a victim archetype, there's the villain archetype, and then there's the hero archetype that we call the victor. And so the victor can be a rescuer, a savior, a martyr. This is the person that we call the steward of righteousness. They come to the aid of the victim, whether the victim asks for it or not.
Oof.
And so this is where we get stuck.
I got goosebumps when you said that.
Right?
Yeah.
And so we have the villain, who we call the harbinger of malice. And this is the person that brings the tragedy to the victim, or is perceived to bring tragedy to the victim.
Because you can be a projected villain, even though that's not their experience.
And then we have the victim, which we call the guardian of peril. This person holds on to the energy of perilous dynamics, of being hurt, of being harmed, of being in a space of loss, deficit, injury, death, pain. We call those the 7 attributes of violence. This person is identifying with being in that space all the time. They baked it into who they are. And so you can be victimized without being a victim. You can support somebody without being a hero or a rescuer. You can, if you're falling down, I'm going to support you, but I don't have to wear the identity of I'm the person who rescued Cal, right?
You're not going to pick me up off the ground. You may offer a hand if I want help getting off the ground, but you're not going to take it upon yourself to hoist me to my feet.
Well, I might if your leg's broken. delete, right?
Yes.
But this is supporting someone is not being the identity of this is my job. I am the person to rescue you. Give me praise. They are righteous in that space. And so if I'm supporting other human beings, it's because another human being needs support and I am seeing a reflection of myself. And so that's why I'm supporting them. I don't need accolades and all of that other stuff based on what I did.
It's not that you just don't support and help people, but the energy to which you do it matters tremendously for your own health, for the sustainability of society, and for growth.
And so when we have things like the oppression trap triangle, and we teach people this way before they go into a psychedelic experience, or even right before it, they have a lens and they're able to see these things differently. So when they get out, they know if they're playing victim. They know if they're broadcasting villain. They know if they're rescuing and being a victor. And they have that one. That's one tool of the many things that we offer people around integration is the oppression trap triangle. And it's saved I can't tell you how many years people are like, oh my gosh, I wish I knew this 20 years ago. Because it's changed my relationship dynamics. We've had therapists come to the Condor approach and like, I wish I knew this stuff 20 years ago. My clients would have different relationships with their lives and they've taken this and applied it to their practices and it's changed everything. And this is not just about, just 1 second, this is not just about psychedelic experiences. This is about any transformational experience where you can become different than you were. You still have all those old parts that you may have not integrated. And so being able to take those things and bring them together in a marriage where they're all working flawlessly, that is integration.
That's one of the things I love about the work you do is it just doesn't have to be about plant medicine. If that's what you want to do, that is a huge part of it. So that is offered. And if that's not what you're called to, and if you're not called to it, don't do it. This is applicable to you as well.
Yeah. People are going through, like you'll hear the term ego death in psychedelics, right? And it's almost like become an objective where people are like, they need to get the ego death as if that's going to save them time. It's usually the high performers that are like, well, if 2 grams is good, 10 must be great. Or if I had ayahuasca for 3 days, in Costa Rica. Maybe if I go to the jungle for a month, I'll just purge it all out and come back clean and brand new, right? Well, it doesn't really work that way. It's kind of like remodeling a house. It's one thing to move the furniture around, but if you start going for load-bearing walls, like your childhood woundings, your relationship with your parents, experiences that are happening, and you take a sledgehammer to it, the roof's going to cave in. We have created structures we call like a psychotecture. What is your inner psychotecture? Because we can see what's load-bearing so that before you go do any work, having a child, becoming a first-time mother is an ego death. Who you were is not who you are on the other side of that. But how do you integrate it? For us, postpartum depression is not just a chemical change. It's a change of self, a grieving process of the former self that many don't have language and can't acknowledge. But when we see, of course, they're grateful for the child. Of course, they're grateful for this, but they're mourning the past selves that no longer exist. There's a great book called Your Symphony of Selves by Jordan Gruber, and he co-wrote it with James Fadiman. And it's all about how parts work, basically, that you have all these different selves. So the self you were before that was rocking your business and, as a woman and independent, those were all identities that no longer exist. And so your body can go through a mourning process. How do you integrate it? So as Ta said, it's not integrating psychedelics. We haven't been taught how to integrate life and big changes. How often do we see men retire or they sell their business, a big buyout or something, right? A big exit. Then they have a full either health crash or really crash because they don't know who they are anymore. Yeah. Because everything was so wrapped up in the identity that built the business. I watched my brother go through it. He had $100 million exited in business that he spent like 16, 17 years building. So when that's been your whole identity, who are you without those parts?
And he was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've had friends this has happened to where we are told that in society that that's what you're supposed to do. You build this business, you sell it to someone else for a big exit and you get out and you do that. And it's over like that. Sure, you have the money and all that brings, and then the purpose is gone. And all you didn't realize that you had the thing that you got to try to redo the thing you just did, and it's not there. You can't do it. And I just hear men just grieve that old, like I had it, I did it, I did the thing, but I followed this again back to what you were talking about. This whole kind of. I love the concept of just like disintegrating in the medicine, but we get reintegrated into these old paradigms. I mean, it's why I do the podcast, right? It's like I had my disintegration. It's like I'm fucking doing all this wrong. I got to see all the things. And so this has been a journey for me to start to undo all those old agreements, and they come back and they come stronger. Like, it is a journey, and I'll be on it until the day I die.
And you might still be on it after that. Let's be fair. You don't know.
Let's be fair. Yeah.
And when you realize you're not in charge, like no one's in charge. There's someone behind the curtain in charge. But when you really let your ego realize, I am not in charge of my kids, of my marriage, I am totally responsible for my response.
Yes.
And to hold my energy and be the adult in the room. But I can't control these circumstances.
Yes. I have
that's very impressive.
Completely in the field now and just trust. And, I forgot what I was going to say.
Who cares?
Yeah.
That was such a good feeling. I'm completely in the field right now and I trust. Can we just stop there?
Yeah.
This is a sentence that is unbelievably strong. I'm completely in the field, which means I'm letting life have her way. I'm listening deeply. I'm stopping. I'm meditating. What was that? It just happened to me today. There was all this, I'm in Texas. I don't even know. There was like all this traffic and then 35 things went wrong. I just found out I had a bestseller on USA Today. So all this wave of energy came at me. I was stressing. And then there's too many details and I got driving to the wrong place. And you know how that is? And then I caught myself. This is how you know. Then you get this little smile on your face and you're like, who's in charge? Yeah. Like, okay, well, we got to the place in time and I'm like, it all worked out. And I can't deny, this is Scorpio, acceptance of the human condition. You may be in this peaceful state. I hate to say this. And then something's going to happen. Well, you said it.
Yeah.
And then you know the technology, which is what's in this book.
Yeah.
How do you find your tendency of your personality? Like yours is to get super intense and controlling and drill down.
Yes.
Mine is to detach and go, I don't care. Like a little detached, little stupid air sign. Like just walk away and just completely disregard and just change my mind anyway. So there's the disassociating people.
I can't do that.
No, you cannot. There's different personality types. It's all in the book. That's why we read the book. What is my style of my propensity, my cute little human nature? Yours is intensity. Then comes the observer, and the 13th sign goes, could you calm down? And then you look up and go, it becomes endearing.
Yes.
Versus, don't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
That's when the ego grabs down. Don't you dare judge me. I'm judging myself. Like, who is that? Yeah. So this is the mastery of the high road of astrology is your self-awareness starts by studying your personality propensity.
Mm-hmm.
And you see it lifetime in your marriage. You see it lifetime everywhere. Hello.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you learn this muscle called the 13th sign that goes, let me take a breath. Just give me a minute. I mean, I had to clear this with my poor little assistant in the car. And I said to her, listen, that was Debra the bitch. Yeah. I'm okay with that. I'm not going to pretend I'm so spiritual that I'm not a bitch. I don't want my human to ever stop crying.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that I'm not disappointed.
Yes.
That's the danger of the new age. That's the danger of taking medicine. That's the danger of addiction. That's why we drink. Get this feeling off me. I don't want to do that. Keep the feeling on me. Give me a minute. Yeah. I'll go off by myself. Take a breath. Talk to my best friend, the dog, or the therapist, whoever.
Yeah.
And realize I am so full of shit. I talk about being so calm, and all it took was Texas traffic.
Yeah.
And I was out. Oh, that's right. And I got lost on the way there, and I was out. I watched my whole nervous system. And then it didn't take long, to your point. And that's what the nature of how this matrix will shift. Why will the planet change? Because people like you and I figured out the code of not letting the ego run the ship. And that's what we're suffering from. This planet is addicted to consumption and to the ego's fulfillment. At Amazon, every shopping, every single thing you spend money, every house you buy, every clothes, all of that is your ego. And it's healthy to have one as long as there's somebody watching.
Yeah.
Who is the governor? What happened? You know why there's no government on this planet anymore? Because we stopped governing our own inner world. Mm-hmm. So I've changed the government.
Well, here's this for a little nugget. First of all, that whole shift of the mind is a wonderful servant and a terrible master. And I told you, that is so
ding, 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 ding.
It is right there now for me. As an aside, I was at the Health Optimization Summit here in Austin. It used to be called Paleo FX. It's a bunch of cool biohacking and brands and wellness stuff. And it occurred to me, I'm looking around and my friends have these big bags of stuff that they're getting from all the vendors, right? There's all this cool shit. And I look and all I have is my little mochila that I got from Colombia as a gift, right? And so I haven't put anything in there except the stuff I brought. And I'm first thought, should I go get a bag and start getting some stuff? And I was like, I don't need anything. I felt so complete that I wasn't looking for anything.
That's such an amazing position.
I get all the things. I order extra pairs of sneakers just in case my other one.
Sagittarius.
I get all, my wife, she's like, why did you order 3 of the same pair?
That's
because I love these. And it's just have.
Your awareness is on. What you're trying to say is you're awake.
I see it all.
And it's really unusual. And I keep asking, last night I was doing a talk at the in Denver and I said, I don't really know if I'm awake. And one of my dear friends screamed, Debra. And I was like, oh. And then I wondered, how do you know if you're, that was a funny moment, but how do we know we're awake? It's when the free will button has enough awareness to go, do I really need all this stuff? That's a very advanced state, Cal.
It feels like it. And it's kind of odd to talk about. It's certainly, I talk about a lot of things on the podcast, but this is just new territory. There are people that I've talked to about it that I feel I can hold it and understand it. And
it's just something for us to aspire towards.
It
And it will, I think one of the gifts of double Scorpio is you've paid your dues. The amount of pain this lifetime, you learn from the most painful lessons. There's nothing subtle about you.
And people, that's the thing that made me feel so seen, is that no one knows any of that. No one knows like
your
the pain.
wife knows that.
She does.
But it's hard to go in and see it. It's a secret world you live in.
Yes, I keep it hidden.
And it's the human condition. Can we talk about that? How many people are secretly lonely? How many people really feel misunderstood, that no one really loves them? This is a deep wound that lives in the collective psyche, which is why we're suffering. How many people feel like they don't really know if anyone will ever be close to them except for the dog? Like, who really cares? Who really has your back? These are all symptoms. Did your parents even get you? Like, did they ever really see you? Who in the world has seen you? It's so beautiful. It's the aching and the longing of the soul that wants nothing more than for the ego to come by and say, I do love you. And I'm sorry for all the noises and all the drama that I used to stay awake. I'm getting more and more willing to stay awake just by the softest call. Just whisper my name and I'll be there. That's what I've learned.
Yeah.
That's the gift of almost turning 70.
Well,
just whisper my name. Just whisper my name and I'll be available.
Tell me this about your experience, because what I found is when those triggers come up, now I don't have all the ego or whatever, the ruminating. And then as I do my meditation, I get to chuckle like, oh my God, look at you. You were afraid of missing out. That's that old pattern.
It's so cute. It's the formula that I teach everyone. You've got to stop. You've got to let the thing happen. Reactivity. Please don't stop being human. Yeah. You're all going to, can I swear? You're all going to fuck up. It's just, I wanted to call this book You're Fucked Up, and I still like it. But they wouldn't let me.
It's a great subtitle.
But they wouldn't let me. You're
really
fucked up and I still like you. So everyone's going to have that. And then as soon as you get to the muscle that you're talking about as a practice, okay, I just did that. I reacted. And you step off and you go into meditation. It can be for 10 minutes. You can journal. I don't care.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you'll know, because this little smile comes out and you go, that's so cute. I'm such a wreck. Like, I'm such a funny little person.
What actually Maslow has listed as the highest in the hierarchy of needs. It's self-actualization in the pyramid you usually see, but what's not as well known is that self-transcendence was higher than self-actualization. And Viktor Frankl even put it more beautifully when he said, self-actualization is the side effect of self-transcendence. So through transcendence, we actually actualize.
So how can people get there with their everyday lives? I mean, not everybody can do a polar expedition. Not that that's exactly how you did it. That's one of the many ways, but...
Well, a pathway through, one of the core ones is suffering, seeking it out, stepping into it. Now, if you're in the midst of survival, needless to say, the situation is somewhat different, right? So what got you here won't get you there. There's different evolutions in the human journey. So it's something that from building from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I create a framework called the STORM framework. And it's 5 levels in the human evolution. So survival, transformation, optimization, relentless, and mastery. And to get from survival, so this is someone on the depths, like when I was in the verge of suicide, to get from there to just out of there is different than if I'm now playing on the highest edge of mastery. The tools are different, right? So if you're on the edge of survival, you just need to get out of pain. Forget about obviously seeking out more suffering. Like when I was in that core, that's all I needed to do is get out of pain, just briefly. And that could honestly mean at the time, if I'm one day sober, stacking that win, celebrating that, finding what I would call joy islands, moments of glimpses of light, glimmers of hope that you can cling to. Okay, 1 day I'm sober, 2 days I'm sober, 3 days I'm sober. Slowly but surely you start evolving. So actually I have a series of tools that would be helpful on my Fearvana website where people can find, depending on where they are on their journey, to guide them to that next stage of their evolution. But when I'm on that depth of pain, initially forget about seeking enlightenment, just to get out of pain. And one way to start that process is helping others, finding joy islands, doing a little bit here to stack the wins. And that could be just celebrating that you were sober one day, right? Now, once you're out of that slowly, you seek your path, you find your purpose. If you don't know it, there's different ways to figure that out. We can happily get into, but you find something to pursue, to pursue your meaning. And even research has shown there's 2 pathways that create a fulfilled, happy life. It's purpose and connection. So finding your meaning, what I call in Fearvana, your worthy struggle. And I call it that because anything worthwhile will be a struggle. So it's not about avoiding it. And my worthy struggle is polar travel, but that doesn't mean it's the only path to fulfillment and enlightenment, right?
And you're not saying you got to struggle the rest of your life. There's moments of ease for sure.
Of course.
But the struggle is paramount in this growth, exploration, and leveling up.
Exactly. And also, seeking out struggle is going to be unique for each person. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So there was a time for me that fun, light things was my struggle. I had gone for this run once many years ago, 5-6 years ago, actually more than that. And I saw a sign that said 5K fun run. And I had visceral disgust at the idea of a fun run. You don't run for fun. Every run has to be an exercise in suffering. Every run, an exercise in suffering. But that was a deeply flawed way of thinking. And I realized that I had developed such a comfort zone with playing on the edge of suffering that I was bringing it in all areas of my life. And instead finding now the other edge of joy, which over time led to this concept that I now call, and actually in Antarctica, it got crystallized even more, that I call the paradox of oneness. And this to me is the foundational truth in not just Buddhism, but in spiritual seeking and in the human experience. And what this means is the human experience is this dance of opposites. There's masculine, feminine, life and death, light and dark, ego and humility, pain and pleasure, so on and so forth. There's a series of dualities that encompass the human experience. The paradox of oneness is the realization that every two of these opposites are not separate, but they are parts of the same whole. And it's our conceptual mind that creates division and separation. But true peace, true freedom, true mastery even, is not about resisting or clinging to one side or to either side, but embracing both. And then, as we said earlier, not just embracing, but the next step is exploring both. And that's how I started finding my peace, that recognizing that. So if you look at the duality of pain and pleasure, pleasure was my thing that I struggled with. When I would go to retreats, people would do like light, playful dances between breaks. I would rather do 100 burpees in the corner than do that, because that was my comfort zone.
Mr. Intensity, I love it. Yeah.
So I started playing on that edge.
Yeah.
Because if you stay doing what you've always done, you'll keep getting what you've always gotten.
Yeah.
And we all don't know what we don't know, right?
Yeah.
So you got to go onto the other edge. So at any point in my life, I'm always looking for a duality causing friction. And this is something, even when you were talking earlier about some of the things you're struggling, like this is one thing that I encourage people to do, is find a duality causing you friction and go play on the other edge of it. So even for me, what drew me to the darkness that you mentioned the first time was I was so good at now doing, but I struggled with stillness, just being. So I went into a 7-day darkness retreat. That was my other edge. Let me play on the edge of stillness. And I just sat still with myself for the first time in 7 days. And the second time I did it, 10 days in pitch darkness. Can't see your hand in front of you. Just to be within and to go within.
Bro, you just keep firing away here. Holy shit. What I do love, one of the things that has drawn me to Buddhism is that holding both things. And
non-dualism is,
we're just not, certainly in the West here, I was not taught that. There's a right and wrong, and you seek out the right and you resist the wrong. And there's so much challenge that comes in that certainty. And I think when I opened up to curiosity and not knowing, whoa, life got a lot easier. And then when I find myself back into that, it's like, oh, what's not okay with me right now, where I'm seeking certainty, where I don't feel safe or whatever is driving that. It's an indication for me that that's not where I want to live. It happens to be where I'm at right now. And it's like, can I just be kind enough to myself and, get myself to the next stage?
Yeah. Release those second darts when they show up, to just, and then seek out a new edge. And in that you'll find, like, that's when you start playing on the other edge, that's how you start realizing that they're two actually parts of the same whole. Because you realize you can't have one without the other. When I'm standing on a summit, the only reason I can look down is because there's a valley. If there's no valley, there's no summit. Then it's pure flat. And I don't just mean this literally. Think about it figuratively in our life. You can't have a high without a low.
No.
You can't have light without darkness. And when I go play on the other edge, I start to see how they're actually parts of the same whole. It's like breathing. It's the heartbeat. I mean, the life itself is an expression of two opposites coming together. There's an exhalation and an inhalation, two opposing forces that create a sum that greater than each individual part. The heartbeat, contraction, expansion, two opposing forces that birth life itself. And that's the essence of Buddhism, of this whole idea of the paradox of oneness, is that when you stop doing that, and how this applies in day-to-day life is when you feel fear, when you feel anxiety, when you feel stress, you release those second darts of suffering and you stop demonizing it. The moment you stop judging the feeling, the experience as good or bad, but recognizing it as part of the greater experience of a whole that transcends each duality, you find so much more peace. And you realize that this thing we're seeking, happiness, it's not the elimination of sadness, it's the ability to find the gift in sadness. But you can't have happiness without sadness.
Then it's like you just need to sit in the feeling of that.
Exactly.
And just let it be there. Give it space.
The only way out is through. That's the only way you'll find. And Carl Jung put it absolutely perfectly when he says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate.
Yeah.
And he also said people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their soul.
Yeah. Been there for sure.
Likewise, brother.